Good evening. Hello, welcome. Hi, everybody. This is Terra Lumination, and we have another episode of Story Time. Yeah, who knew? This is kind of spontaneous, and we're doing it for fun because people like to listen to stories, and I've got a little story for you. It's called, let me think, what we're going to call it. I forgot. I had a title. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's called, let me see if I can do this. Taylor and the TL scarf. Okay? And it's actually a dream. It's a story that comes from a dream. And what's so odd is that sometimes dreams feel more real in real life. And that's why I felt I had to tell the story, because this just happened to be one of those dreams that felt so real. When you wake up from the dream, you really start to question reality. So it's a short story, and you don't even have to watch the screen to enjoy this. You can just put some headphones on with your smartphone and just chill if you're totally bored out of your mind somewhere, doing nothing, stuck in traffic, or whatever it is. You can't sleep, or you just want to get some distraction, or maybe just have a giggle. Whatever it is, it doesn't even kind of matter. Stories can help you to just completely feel disembodied, where you don't have to do anything with anybody else for any reason at all, and you can just dissolve into the story. So that's all we're doing here. So it's called Taylor and the TL Scarf. So a little bit of background. Actually, there's hardly any background because the story is so short. It's like a little short film, you know? So I don't know if you can picture yourself here in the situation. I'm going to try and put you guys in the situation itself as though you're myself, rather than having to be a listener. I'd like you to be able to participate as though you're in the dream itself. So if you could picture yourself in the United States, and it's springtime, and it's a beautiful day, and we're right in the heart of a city, some big city in the United States that happens to have a river moving right through the middle of it. I don't know how many cities in the United States have that, but this was one of those cities. And it wasn't a flat city, it wasn't a mountainous place or anything, it was just kind of a city. I don't really know what the surrounding environment was like, but it was a city with a river going down the middle, and the environment was just generally very, very serene and lovely. It could have been late spring or a gentle day in summer or maybe early fall, something like that. Anyway, there I was. I'm not going to say Terra Illumination because that's what happens in the story. It's a Terra Illumination channel with Terra Illumination story time. But we're just going to talk about it first person, and I'm going to invite you just to live in the story with me, okay? Because it's more fun that way. So anyway, if you could picture yourself in this city, right at the core of the city, in the heart of the town, where there happens to be this river. And it's a very orderly river. It's not, um, you know, one of those places that has a lot of shrubbery around the banks or anything. It's an organized city type river where it has wharfs and concrete walls and pathways and walkways and boardwalks for people to enjoy the environment. And it's the size of a city that actually has bridges crossing from one side of the city to the other. And the bridges are real bridges. These are big bridges. We're not talking about a little small town. We're talking about a real live city. So these are real bridges with real traffic. And alongside this river, like many rivers, there was a little estuary because there was a little tiny side river, or maybe a very large stream, or whatever you want to call it, that happened to join with the big river. And I just happened to be on one of those little much smaller bridges that allow you to cross from one side of the small river to the other side of the small river. The river was small enough where you really wouldn't have any kind of major boats, maybe some fishing, little fish boats or little, you know, rowing boats or something like that, or paddle boats or canoes, but nothing big or fancy. It was really just a small estuary. And on the estuary side of things, there were plants and trees and pathways and gravel and things like that. So it was much smaller scale, much more suitable to like bike paths and people just noodling around. One of those kind of environments. And in front of me, I could see very clearly the big river itself. And of course, if you follow the water, there's no real distinction because the little estuary just feeds into the river. So there's the big river just doing its thing, and you could see a couple of things like, you know, coal barges going along, and some of those like tourist boats that they have with lots of windows and open air seating where people just hang out and have picnics and stare at the city from the water, stuff like that. Just very routine and ordinary. And in the background, I started to hear this very loud sound, but it was a deep rumble far away, and I realized, oh God, it's some wacko on some big powerboat trying to show off. You know, one of those situations. And it got louder and louder and louder. And then it just became obnoxious and annoying. And I kept thinking, okay, there's something weird going on here. It sounds a little bit more than just a nutcase showing off when they're drunk with on their party boat. It sounded like there was something bad going on. Not too bad, but definitely bad. And I realized that this boat was really big. It was just absurdly big. It really shouldn't have even been on this river. And it was going at a fair pace. You could see it coming. And I kept thinking, oh God, this is not good. And then I started to notice that behind this boat were some other boats, a bit smaller, but very powerful. And you could see the flashing lights. It was just like a cop chase on the street, only this was on a river. I kept thinking, oh, this is not good. This is not good. I don't want to get involved in this. Yeah, sure, if I had a fancy phone, I could film it and something like that, but I don't really care. I'm just trying to have a nice day here on my little walk in this strange river town. So anyway, the big boat goes by, and of course it leaves a massive wake. You know, that big, massive freaking ripple that it leaves behind as it's going through. And then that's followed by the other police boats. And of course, this poor little estuary couldn't handle it. So the big river could more or less handle it. It was obviously annoying to everybody else, but for the little estuary, it was a big problem, because it looked like a massive tsunami from the point of view of the estuary. So anyway, I kept thinking, well, I'm already halfway across the bridge, so what can you do? I'm not going to run. I'm not going to freak out. I'm just going to live this thing. And so I just decide I'm just going to watch. And I'm going to trust that I'm not going to get hurt. And so this big freak wave crashes up the estuary, and then it crashes on an even tinier miniature estuary that joins right next to the estuary. And I thought, oh, I never even noticed that thing. I'm going to go up there anyway, because it looks like it's a shitstorm up there now. And I was just curious. I kept thinking, I got to see what happened. I just have to go see what happened. I was not affected. The big wave got just under the bridge, okay, and I was safe. And then I kind of picked up my pace, and walked across the bridge to the other side, and then joined into the little estuary. And I noticed on the little tiny estuary that there was an elevated place where people would ordinarily hang out and maybe have little picnics or something, because it had shrubs and plants and little openings and settings where you could just chill out and relax, and a few trash cans for the local messy people. And I noticed that there were some people there, and they were badly affected because they had actually parked up their own little fun boat on the side of the mini estuary. And what had happened is their little fun boat had been smashed by this like secondary tsunami wave, and the fun boat had been crushed against the side of the mini estuary and then bounced up onto the flat area where other people were sitting. And this all happened really, really quickly, but of course in a dream it seems to be slow motion. So by the time I got across to the other side, all I could see were a few people having their picnic and this boat tipped upside down, dripping water on the other side. And I kind of ran up, and then I suddenly slowed down because I realized the picnic people don't really care. I could tell it was obviously their little boat, but they really weren't concerned. They were absorbed in their picnic, and they were kind of enjoying the absurdity of the moment. And so I thought, well, if they're not freaking out, then I'm not going to freak out. Excuse me, I just need a sip. Hold on. So I thought, I'm just going to chill out too. I have a right to be here. I'm a U.S. citizen, and I've got my ID, and so, cool. I had forgotten completely about the big incident on the river. I didn't care anymore, just like these people. I thought, they don't care, I don't care. So I went and sat a very respectable distance from these people. And I just minded my own business. I enjoyed the environment. I was looking at the trees, looking at the flowers, looking at the bugs, looking at the gravel, looking around, looking at the waving of the plants, and just enjoying soaking things up. I was like squatting on the ground with my arms behind me, my palms onto the dirt, just totally chill. I was wearing a ball cap and sunglasses, just being extremely ordinary. So, what's actually going on here? I was just, of course, like anyone else, just a tiny bit curious, so I let my gaze move to the left a little bit, because I had already parked myself well onto the right-hand side of these other people. And I looked at the other people, and they were just totally happy amongst themselves. They had a huge, thick, big blanket, and they had a really nice picnic basket, and they had all sorts of treats around them. And some of them were a bit damp from having been splashed by the crazy wave, but again, they didn't care. There was chitter chatter going on, and I couldn't really make it out what they were talking about, but I didn't really care. I just thought, that's so nice. That's just such a lovely indication of how incredibly fortunate I am to be able to live this life that I have, where I can just be in this environment and everything's fine, even though we just had a mini catastrophe. And I looked again, and I looked at that one of the people, and I noticed there was a familiar look, and I thought, wait a minute, I know that person. I know who that is. I've seen them in magazines. In fact, they're famous. In fact, they're very rich and famous. I thought, okay, this can't be. This is totally weird. It's Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift is a very rich, very famous pop star. She does country pop music, that kind of thing. And she's very popular with teenage girls and the moms and the dads of teenage girls and things like that. And probably a bunch of guys who think they're going to get it on with Taylor Swift. I don't really know. I don't know much about her, frankly. But of course you see the name, because if you're in a grocery store and she's dating somebody or she's suing somebody for harassment or whatever, you can't help notice it. And so I recognized her from the magazine covers, and I thought, oh my God, it's Taylor Swift. I kept thinking, oh, well, she's just probably in the middle of a big world tour, and she's just hanging out, and she's in this city, and she's going to be on stage tonight, and she just wants to chill out. But I kept thinking that it is kind of strange to be here sitting no more than like 10 feet away, maybe 15 feet away, like 3 meters away from Taylor Swift. And I kept thinking, well, this is kind of weird. Like, if it's Taylor Swift, where's the security team? Where are the security guards? Where's the discreet limousine? Things like that. And I couldn't see any of it. So I thought, okay, this is a little bit odd. Maybe she thinks she's in a safe territory where she absolutely knows she's not going to get bugged by strangers and fans and freak stalkers and stuff like that. And so I kept thinking, what am I supposed to do here now? It isn't often that you just end up sitting next to a global pop star. So I thought, I'm not going to freak out. I'm just another person like her. She's just another person like me. She's just having her day. And you could see some of them were there was about 4 or 5 of them. And one was on her smartphone texting. And Taylor was actually on her phone and chatting all at the same time and hanging out with her friends. But you have to understand this was actually a very hot day. It was lovely, but it was very hot without being oppressive, but still very hot. And there wasn't a lot of shade where we were all sitting. And I kept thinking, I am kind of getting pretty hot myself. And I looked around and I think I need some shade. And I turned around and right behind me, maybe like 8 or 10 feet behind me, I found some shade, some dense, good, rich, dark shade under these bushes and trees. And I thought, I'm just going to be cool. I'm just going to slide my way back there and just kind of discreetly hide under the shade and everything's fine. And then I'll just get fed up and I'll go home. That's not what happened. Anyway, I was there. Now I'm sitting back in the shade and I'm looking around. I'm still seeing the nature and the beauty and watching Taylor and her friends do their stuff. And then all of a sudden, Taylor gets up. And I kept thinking, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why. And she's looking around and she's on her smartphone. And then she gets off the smartphone from talking and then she starts texting. And you can tell that she's a bit hot and bothered. She hasn't got any fancy pop star clothes on. She's just kind of wearing sweats or something. Very, very simple stuff. No fancy makeup, nothing. And nothing like that. And so she sees the shade too. And I knew that she could probably tell that there was somebody there, but she didn't seem to care. She obviously wanted shade because she was hot. So she came and sat under the shade. But the shady area was actually quite small. And so she really didn't have a lot of choice except to sit next to me. Not absolutely like shoulder to shoulder, but pretty damn close. And so I start thinking, gulp, what do I do now? And she kind of looked over at me and gave me a smile. And I kind of went, like, like stranger to stranger kind of thing. And I did whatever I could to keep my shit together and not say anything or do anything because I didn't want to freak her out. I kept thinking, like, what if I put myself in her shoes and she's in this very trusting, safe place, peace of mind thing, and she's used to being harassed and stalked and bugged and all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't want to be in that, and I wouldn't want some dude hustling me while I'm out in my safe zone with my safe people. So I thought, I'm just going to be chill. So that's what I was doing. I was just being nice and plain and quiet and ordinary. She was just texting, so I couldn't overhear a conversation, and she was quite absorbed. And I guess deep down she probably thought it was a little bit strange herself that she's Taylor Swift sitting right next to a stranger and nothing was happening. Like, maybe she was thinking, like, this is kind of weird. He would probably have, like, said something or done something by now. But he's not doing that. Okay, so I'm just going to keep texting. So anyway, things kind of went on and on like this for a while. I kept thinking, this is really kind of strange. And I kept thinking, no, this is too much. It's obviously a sign from heaven. Ha 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 ha. This is one of those meant to be situations. And I kept thinking, I've always got my pen with me and a piece of paper. Always, always, always. To make notes. And I always have my little kitty plastic cell phone. I don't have a fancy smartphone for most things. And I also happen to have a fresh, brand new copy of the Tarot Lumination beautiful satin silk scarf with me. And it's covered with astrology symbols and stuff like that. And suddenly I started to get all really itchy. And I kept thinking, oh my God, this is a sign. Taylor Swift is here. She's waiting for me. She knows, like, it's a sign for her too, but she knows that that dude has to take the first move. And so I kept thinking, oh my God, this is actually real. This is happening. I'm supposed to take out the silk scarf and I'm supposed to lean over to her and say, hey, Taylor, I know it's you. I know. I'm not supposed to do anything. I'm not a freak. I'm not going to stalk you, but can I ask you a very strange favor? I'm not going to ask you for your autograph, and I'm not going to stalk you or anything, but I'd like you to have a look at my beautiful silk scarf. And I've been looking for a supermodel to wear this and show it off to the whole world so that Terra Illumination could become rich and famous by selling millions of scarves. Of course, all this was happening in my head. And I was getting one of those like weird spacey numb feelings where, you know, you kind of go into a cold sweat and then your palms go sweaty and then your body goes numb and your throat goes very dry. And I kept thinking, oh my God, this is actually happening. How am I going to do this? Or should I do this? And poor Taylor was just sitting there totally innocent. And I couldn't help it. I felt I had to keep putting myself in her situation. And I kept thinking, yeah, I could interpret this as a whole message from heaven that this is an opportunity for me. Me. Ha ha ha. It's all about me now. And then I put myself in her situation. I kept thinking, well, what about her? Wouldn't it be so nice for her just for one day, just to have peace and quiet with her friends and buddies and not have some freak strange neighbor bug her just because she's Taylor Swift? That's the least I could do for her. Otherwise, I would destroy her faith in humanity. It would be catastrophic if I did anything. And so I had this real quandary. What am I supposed to do now? Indulge myself in my obvious determination that this is a message from heaven? Or should I do the honorable, loving thing and just shut up, mind my own business, and let her live her life and enjoy her peace and quiet? So guess what I did? Guess what I did? I did absolutely nothing. And that was that. I sat there. I let my body decompress. I let the sweat on my hands and my dry throat calm down. And nothing much happened. And then Taylor just sat there. She finished her text a little bit. And she shuffled her clothes. And she started to lean back a little bit too. Almost like she was hinting like, I wouldn't mind if you actually talked to me, Mr. Stranger Person. However, as you can tell, I'm Taylor Swift and I'm being very discreet, so I can't make it too obvious. So I'm just going to give you the very slightest hint. And then it's up to you what you do. And again, I decided I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to act dumb. And she kind of went, okay, to herself, obviously. And she leaned forward, tidied herself up a little bit, because she was obviously much more cool now, because it was really nice and cool and comfortable under the shade. And she finished her text and kind of got up and looked back at me and smiled and then walked away. And I kind of smiled at her and let her walk away. I didn't do anything. And then she sat down with her people again and carried on. And I sat there and watched the whole thing. And I kept figuring out, what the hell did I just do? You idiot! You fucking idiot! You just missed a golden opportunity. If you follow up now, she's going to know that you're a stalker and she's going to sue you and do something weird. And I wasn't really scared. I've met lots of rich and famous people before, and it didn't freak me out, but I kept thinking, this is different. This is different. We're just going to leave it as it is. And we're just going to let things grow organically with whatever has to happen with the little scarf. And we'll just let it go, because that's just how it felt. That just felt like the honorable thing to do. I don't know if it was the smart thing to do. Maybe she would have been honored, but we'll never know. Because first of all, it was just a dream. And secondly, we'll never know if I ever made the right decisions in the dream. But at that point, the dream started to fade because I realized I had lived through the experience. It was an experience about what would be the loving, most respectful thing to do if I was Taylor Swift. And I decided what I decided, and I did what I did. And that's the end of the story. So Folks, you can make out whatever you want out of that. It's just a dream, but it was one of those dreams where everything is intensely vivid, where you can feel everything. You can feel the humidity, the moisture. You can see the grass. You can feel the gravel. You can see the texture of their clothes. You could feel the water and the crushing sound of the waves and everything. And you could actually see the little um, boat crashing when it crashed, and all the other stuff that was described earlier. But in the end, it was just a dream, and we just had to catalog it along with all other crazy dreams. Now, just as a point of reference, so that you know, pop star dreams are not unusual for me, Terror Illumination. I used to have very regular Paul McCartney dreams. He's a famous rich pop star. I used to have regular Madonna dreams. And even long ago, I had Lady Di dreams, if you can imagine that. More tales to tell, perhaps. We'll see. But we'll leave it at that for now. I thank you for listening. I hope you got some enjoyment out of it. And if you can figure out what city it is, I'd be grateful to know, because I could never figure it out myself. Anyway, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this little story. And we'll see you again another time. Bye-bye.